Hey adventurers, it seems like it's been a while since I've done a review, but I don't think it actually has. Anyways, this is a review for A Natural History of Dragons, a memoir by Lady Trent. This is written by Marie Brennan. I read this, it's been a month and a half now, I think. I started it in July and finished it in August, and it was amazing. We'll get into my thoughts as we go here. The genre is high fantasy or dragon fantasy. It's technically set in its own world, but it's very similar to Earth, mostly in the types of people, or the cultures, I guess, and then pretty much the cultures and the types of people that are in it. It is technically an adult fantasy, I think, but it's not something that I would have an issue giving to a teenager or a young adult. It's clean. It's just very, very well done, very clean, very simple, but I just really enjoyed it. As always, I will be following my 5 elements of story outline. So as always, that starts with characters. I didn't write a whole ton about these characters because I forgot to when I was writing this review outline. I don't know, right when I finished the book, and I forgot to write stuff about characters. So I'm not gonna talk too much about each specific character, but the 4 main characters were Isabella, Jacob, Lord Hilford, and Mr. Wilker. Isabella is the main character. She also, or Lady Trent, who Isabella becomes in the future sometime, is narrating this story. So that's where she's basically acting as the narrator for the story, I guess. Jacob is Isabella's husband. He's very interested in natural history and in dragons, but not as much as Isabella, who is absolutely obsessed with dragons. Lord Hilford is he's an earl, and he's the one who's funding the expedition, and he's going on it too, I guess. He's another one who's very interested in dragons, who realizes not very much is known about dragons and who really likes and respects them. And then Mr. Wilker is Lord Hilford's assistant, and he's not a bad person, but he's kind of acts as an antagonist at times, not because he's a bad guy, but because he clashes with Isabella and the fact that Isabella is on the expedition. More of that if you read the book. You'll understand what I'm getting at. All of the characters were really, really well developed. I really enjoyed seeing each of them in each of their character arcs, because they do all have character arcs, plus the other side characters like Dagmira, and I can't remember any of the other people's names because it's been a month since I've read it now, but they were all really, really good and really strong characters, very interesting to follow. The plot tells the story of a young girl and her interests in dragons, and as she grows up and goes on her first expedition to learn about and study these magnificent creatures. It's good, but fairly generic in some ways. It definitely wasn't supposed to be some weird, out of the norm plot line. It was still very different, but not anything crazy out there. It wasn't anything too weird. It was fairly simple plotline to follow. There was a bit of mystery to it, and that was really cool. It's just the way that it was done. I kind of wish it would have been done slightly different, but I do like the way it was done. There's a lot about it that was really good. I really enjoyed the plot. It's kind of one that, even though it is fairly generic in some ways, the way it's done and the fact that it's literally, we're just going as scientists to study dragons. So cool, so interesting, so different than what I have personally read. I'm sure there's other books out there like it, but I haven't read enough of them or very many of them at all. I guess it kind of reminded me of like an adult version of How to Train Your Dragon, a little bit. So yeah, it is just very cool. I very much enjoyed the plot, even though it wasn't super unique, I guess. The themes in this book, there was quite a few of them: scholarship, research, respect, understanding nature, wonder, and awe. All those things, there's lots of other ones as well, but those were the ones that really stood out to me as reading it, because it's written kind of as like a scientific journey expedition. Those are the themes that stood out most to me. They're very good themes, different than you normally see. You don't normally see themes of scholarship and research in a book. Me seeing it really makes me love it even more, because when you look at our channel name, An Erudite Adventure, that's exactly what we're about, is scholarship through research. I wouldn't say the execution of the themes is the strongest that I've ever seen, and it's definitely not the most obvious, but I really enjoyed that. I don't love bludgeoning people over the head with themes. That turns me off to a book faster than not having any themes at all. So I do appreciate I really appreciate the themes that are portrayed. I do wish they would have been portrayed a little bit stronger and a little bit more noticeably, but I'm not mad at how they were portrayed. The world was beautifully crafted. It was very similar to Earth, like I already mentioned. Very similar to like a Victorian England time period. The technology is advancing. It's not heavily utilized yet, but there's things like steam ships, stuff like that. Technology is starting. I don't remember if there's cars, but I know there's like steamships and stuff like that. So it's starting to develop, and it's starting to advance to where it could be well used in lots of ways, but it's still uncommon other than for transportation purposes, as in ships, boats, and stuff like that. There's very clear similarities to peoples and cultures of Earth. Again, I already mentioned this, but it was really well done. It didn't feel forced or out of place. It just felt, okay, here's a culture that we can take some inspiration from and use it for this story, because it will help people to more easily connect with these characters in this place and stuff like that. I thought it was really well done. I didn't think it was the most unique because of those factors, but I did think it was really well done. So for uniqueness factor, there wasn't really a magic system to speak of, at least not in the first book. There may be in later books in the series, but I haven't read them yet. I really want to, but I haven't gotten there yet. But what made it unique was all the stuff about dragons. The fact that they were known to exist, but not much was known about them. This is not that uncommon of a theme, I guess, but the way they went about studying them was super cool. What they broke down, what it was that makes a dragon, what classifies something as a true dragon or as a dragon relative, but not exactly a true dragon. I mean, they gave information on the anatomy and the structure of dragons, which was so cool. Seeing how the dragon's wings worked, probably my favorite thing I've ever heard of about dragons. It was so cool to see. And then the other aspect that made this story particularly unique was telling it as a memoir. This is, as I mentioned, told by Lady Trent from the future, telling the story of Isabel, Lady Trent's first expedition into dragon research. And I thought it was really well done. My general thoughts on this were there were a few things that I didn't care for. Certain things that were set up and the payoff was not what I wanted or hoped for. They did it in a slightly different way. Like I mentioned, the mystery aspect, that was one of those things. It was well done. I'm not gonna lie, it was very, very well done. But even after it was resolved, I wanted it to be the other way, just for the sake of it being that other thing that I was hoping it would be and that they were saying it might be type thing. It had some very cool horror elements to it. I have not actually read any horror yet. I will be getting to it eventually if I can ever get to it, but I would love to read some more. But I know enough about storytelling that I know when something is a horror element, and there were some very interesting and very cool things that they did in this story that I was a little bit freaked out by them. Not like terrified, like, oh my goodness, I can't sleep tonight type thing. It was just like, where are they going with this? This is kind of creepy, this is kind of weird, and I loved it. It was so cool. And then there was one other thing that happened right at the end that I didn't love, and I can't really tell you what it is because spoilers, but if you read this book, you probably have an idea of what I'm talking about here. It didn't work for me. I really wish that it hadn't have happened. If you haven't read the book, when you get there, you'll probably think, I don't know, maybe you won't think the same thing, because I haven't really talked to anybody else yet who has read this book, but I suspect probably most people felt the same way. I don't know, maybe not. The writing style was very nice. It had a very classical feel to it, meaning it felt like many of the classics that you've read. It felt a little bit like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle or Baroness Orczy, or those stories that are very much classics but very simple to read. Robert Louis Stevenson would be another one. Simple, not terribly complex and not hard to understand, but just good. Clear and precise with what they mean. A little bit of flowery prose to them, but not really too bad. It was just very enjoyable. There were some occasional sentences that I had to reread to figure out what they were saying, but I think that might have just been because I was tired and I was reading the book too late at night or something like that. And so it was more difficult for me to understand it rather than it being poorly written. It was just myself rather than the book. I don't know that for sure. I'd have to reread it to find out, but I think that's what it was. Overall, my rating for this book would be 4.5 stars. Just a few things here and there that took it down from a 5-star, mostly in the world building department and a little bit in the themes, I think. Okay, I guess that's wrong. Mostly in the themes and the plot department. It was just took it down just a little bit. Anytime that I read a book, I want to enjoy it, and I really, really enjoyed this book. So I have no idea. It's been a while since I did a review. I'm kind of rusty. I don't know if it's been a while since I did a review. It feels like it has, but I don't think it has been that long. I don't know. I'll have another review for you next time I have my own solo video, and that should be on Redwall, unless I decide to stick a different video in before then. I don't know. I've got quite a few video ideas that are ready to be made, but I'm not quite to them yet, so we'll see what happens. Anyways, I really hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching an art adventure. If you read this book or have read it, please let me know. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. It was so different than what I'm used to, and just very refreshing from the normal. I mean, I'm used to, when reading fantasy, I'm used to reading epic fantasy. And this was technically high fantasy, but it was just done in a very different way from Stormlight or Mistborn or any of those other series that I'm so used to reading. So, thank you guys for watching. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and we have our social medias linked in the description down below. Let me know your thoughts on this book, and we will see you later. Stay warm.